So you may have heard of this little thing Russia is doing in Ukraine, a full-on invasion of the country from multiple fronts. But you may be wondering, why would they do this? Is Ukraine really that worth it? The answer is absolutely. But not because Ukraine is super valuable for its resources, or because it's run by a giga-chad comedian turned president. It has to do with Russia's geography. You see, when Russia was first forming, it was just a loose collection of tribes under the name the Kievan Rus. Their government was centered in Kiev, which is now Kiev, the capital of Ukraine. They were living there, vibing in their Russian way, when these guys called the Mongols came along and raided their cities. The Russians were forced to move northeast to Moscow, and renamed to the Grand Principality of Muscovy. This was a great choice for a place to put a capital. It was surrounded by flat, easily traveled land, there were no major rivers nearby for transportation, and the Mongols were just across the steppe. Wait, did I say great? I meant this was a terrible place for a capital. Any invader could come from wherever they wanted. It was utterly indefensible. But the Russians survived. They continued defending the occasional raid until eventually a terrible man named Ivan stepped up to power and assumed the title of Tsar. Get it? He's Ivan the Terrible. He saw the best way for Moscow to be protected was for Moscow to be surrounded. Buffer zones for days. He took the slight expansionist ideas of his grandfather, Ivan the Great, and cranked them up to the max. Russia pushed their armies outward, to the northern bound of the Arctic, the eastern bound of the Ural Mountains that separate Europe and Asia, and the southern bounds of the Caspian and Black Seas, giving them the Caucasus to separate them from Mongolia. They set up military forces in Chechnya, deterring any would-be attackers. Then they expanded past the Urals, to the Arctic Ocean, and under the new Russian Empire of Peter the Great and Catherine the Great, they were able to occupy Ukraine all the way to the Carpathian Mountains, Lithuania, Latvia, and Estonia, protecting themselves from attack by land or through the Baltic Sea. And with this great empire, Moscow was now completely surrounded in a ring of buffer zones, just like Ivan the Terrible dreamed. In the 20th century, people read a book by a guy named Karl. They decided to overthrow the Tsar and slaughter his entire family, and created the Soviet Union with several other countries. They advertised themselves as a unification for workers everywhere. In reality, they were just a continuation of the Russian Empire. They were led by Russia, who continued to seek expansion, and after World War II, they expanded beyond anything imagined previously, gaining territory all the way to Berlin. But the rest of Europe felt threatened, and Germany wasn't even one Germany anymore. It was torn to pieces by Soviet expansion. And the US said, heck no, we're starting up NATO. And the USSR, now feeling attacked, created the Warsaw Pact. And so the Cold War began. In 1991, the Soviet Union fell, and NATO danced on the rubble of their big wall. This happened partially due to Gorbachev's handling of the Union, which Putin has called a great geopolitical disaster of the century. This loss meant that Russia was reduced to its former size and lost any warm water ports it had, making shipping during the winter once again impossible. Meanwhile, every former Soviet nation except for Russia had either joined NATO, the EU, or both. And with Ukraine being on the verge of joining NATO, as well as home to several warm water ports, Russia sees it as absolutely key that they conquer it before it can join the enemy. Despite having such a large amount of land and resources in Asia, they are no match for the other powers there, because Siberia is nothing but cold tundra and doesn't really have the potential to advance through Asia, because absolutely nobody wants to live there. But that also means they won't be invaded anytime soon, which means Europe has to be Moscow's focus. They want to bring back their empire to its former glory. They need to get a buffer zone back between them and their rivals, so until their glory is restored, they won't stop. Russia feels trapped by their geography. And between Napoleon, the Germans, the Finns, and the Crimeans, they fought a war on the northern European plain approximately every 33 years. Of course they want as much territory as they can have. They need access to trade year-round, but their authoritarian, expansionist mindset means that they aren't afraid to hurt people if it means the nation succeeds. And when the international community recognizes borders and another country ignores those borders, it matters. Thank you for watching, and have a great day.